It is 1 a.m. in Washington, 5 in London, and 2 on a Friday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young, and here are the top stories making headlines at this hour. Seoul and Tokyo will hold a trilateral summit with Washington in The Hague next week in a breakthrough that came after the U.S. urged the pair to mend badly strained ties. And Korea and China conclude their 10th round of FTA negotiations, but remain divided on how to liberalize trade between them. And amid the unrest in Crimea, the EU expands sanctions on Russia, while the U.S. and Russia trade sanctions on key individuals. We'll have those stories and more, but first, let us begin with following days of will they or won't they of the leaders of Korea and Japan meeting alongside their U.S. counterpart next week on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague. But as our presidential office correspondent Choi Yoo-sun tells us, it would be too early to expect ties between Seoul and Tokyo to improve significantly just with one summit meeting.
Korea's presidential spokesperson Min Kyung-wook told reporters Friday the foreign ministry will announce the details of a summit between Korea, the U.S. and Japan in The Hague later in the day. The presidential announcement comes after President Park recently welcomed Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's reaffirmation of Japan's past apology for military sexual enslavement during World War II. The two leaders haven't officially met for summit talks since both of them took office more than a year ago. Bilateral ties have been strained, especially after Abe's visit late last year to a war shrine that honors several Class A war criminals. It's widely viewed that Korea caved into U.S. pressure to come to the three-way talks, as Washington wants strong trilateral ties with both its Northeast Asian allies to ensure regional stability and cope with potential security threats from China. That pressure was likely intensified ahead of U.S. President Barack Obama's visits to Seoul and Tokyo next month. While some experts say the upcoming dialogue could be used to break the impasse between Seoul and Tokyo, others say it would be far-fetched to expect an immediate thawing of relations.
What Korea wants from Japan is an acknowledgement of the illegality of its past colonial rule, an apology from the government, the cabinet, and rightful compensation, as well as restoring the reputation of the victims.
It's also doubtful whether Tokyo will not just speak, but act sincerely about its past atrocities. The Abe cabinet still intends to review the 1993 apology for coercing women into sexual slavery and will likely make further claims to Korea's Dokdo Island in school text next month. In any case, the main agenda at next week's three-way summit are slated to be ways to curb North Korea's nuclear program and seeking a resolution to the crisis in Ukraine. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News.
Now, President Park will also be holding bilateral talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague next week. The presidential office of Cheongwon said that their summit will mainly focus on Seoul-Beijing relations and the political situation surrounding the Korean peninsula. The meeting this time around will mark the fourth meeting between Presidents Park and Xi since their inauguration last year. Now, meanwhile, Korea's National Assembly is in deadlock over a revision to a nuclear security bill, with the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition Democratic Party blaming each other for the holdup. Ruling party lawmakers are eager to pass a revision to the Act on protecting nuclear facilities and preventing nuclear terrorism. Its passage would complete the ratification process for two global treaties on nuclear terrorism and nuclear materials. DP lawmakers say they will only pass the bill if the ruling party agrees to pass other pending bills, including a revision to the broadcasting law. Now, if the revision is not passed, President Park will attend next week's Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague empty-handed. Now, watchers say it would be an embarrassment for Korea, which hosted the previous Nuclear Security Summit 2 years ago. Despite North Korea's recent launches of short-range missiles and ongoing work at its nuclear and missile sites, there appears to be no imminent threat. This is according to 38 North, a website run by the U.S.-Korea Institute at Johns Hopkins University. Now, it said Thursday that there are no signs of impending tests, but warned Pyongyang is increasing its ability to conduct future tests as construction activities were observed at 3 facilities, including the Punggye nuclear test site. Now, North Korea has launched a series of short-range missiles over the last few weeks, sparking fears of a possible nuclear test as missile launches have preceded nuclear tests in the past. Meanwhile, North Korea and Japan have made some headway. They agreed to restart formal government talks that have been stalled since 2012. The talks are expected to focus on North Korea's nuclear program and the issue of Japanese citizens abducted decades ago. Kim Min-ji reports.
Officials from North Korea and Japan will work to resume high-level government talks after a hiatus of over 1 year. The agreement came during informal talks between Geichi Ano, director of the Northeast Asian Division at the Japanese Foreign Ministry, and Yoo Sung-il, head of Japanese Affairs Division at the North Korean Foreign Ministry, on the sidelines of the Red Cross talks in China's northeastern city of Shenyang. In a press conference after the meetings, Ano said both sides were in accordance in restarting the talks, but he didn't mention a date. The Japanese officials said the two sides will arrange further details through their embassies in Beijing. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe says he wants the talks to resume as soon as possible.
The coming government-level talks between Japan and North Korea have been frozen since November 2012. They haven't taken place for quite some time. I want to restart the talks as quickly as possible and to expedite the laying of the groundwork to make the talks happen.
The government-level talks, when they happen, will be the first between North Korea and Japan since November 2012, when talks were scrapped after Pyongyang launched a long-range rocket. They will also mark the first since North Korean leader Kim Jong-un assumed power and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe took office. The talks will likely cover a range of issues, including North Korea's nuclear missile programs and the issue of Japanese citizens abducted decades ago. Pyongyang is also expected to demand Tokyo to ease sanctions in return. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-young live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East C and Japanese name C of Japan in school textbooks in the state of Virginia. Now, Moscow is speeding up its legal annexation of Crimea. Russia's lower house of parliament has overwhelmingly approved a treaty to annex Crimea from Ukraine. Now, this as the United States and Russia exchanged tit-for-tat sanctions. ARIRANG News Foreign Affairs correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports.
It was a vote of 444 against 1 as Russia's lower house of parliament on Thursday approved a treaty to annex Crimea from Ukraine. The upper house is expected to complete ratification on Friday, and President Vladimir Putin and Crimean leaders will ink it early next week.
The decision to accept Crimea into the Russian Federation complies with the international law, including the principle of sovereign equality written on the UN Charter and the right to self-determination.
As Russian forces take over more Ukrainian military bases in Crimea, Ukraine is speeding up its withdrawal of soldiers. In parts of Crimea, residents are lining up to apply for new passports.
We are in Russia. We are Russian citizens now. What do we need Ukrainian passports for? We will exchange them with great pleasure.
It won't be worse, it will be better. It says a lot that the young are in support of Crimea joining Russia.
UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon met with President Putin Thursday in Moscow, urging for a peaceful settlement to the crisis. The UN chief travels to Kiev on Friday to deliver the same message.
The first and foremost, most important way is for Russia and Ukraine sit down together and engage in direct and constructive dialogue.
This comes as U.S. President Barack Obama expanded sanctions to take in a Russian bank and some high-profile Russian billionaires with close ties to Putin. Russia also announced travel bans against 9 prominent Americans, including Senators Harry Reid and John McCain. 황상희, 아리랑 뉴스.
And the European Union has also slapped travel bans and asset freezes on 12 more people, closing in on Vladimir Putin's inner circle to punish him in the escalating crisis over the Russian annexation of the Crimea Peninsula. The move brought the number of Russians and Ukrainians facing EU sanctions to 33, and French President François Hollande said it included a lot of crossover with the people the U.S. is targeting with similar measures. The 28-nation bloc said the names of the sanctioned would be published on Friday. Now, the world's most advanced survey ships and observation planes are once again converging on a location in the south of the Indian Ocean after possible debris from the missing Malaysia airline jet was found. Authorities in Australia said Thursday that they had seen two large objects in the ocean. Our Connie Lee has more.
Poor weather conditions of rain and clouds hampered the search of possible debris of the missing Malaysian Flight 370. Search crews, including one Australian military plane, reported back with no new findings.
Unfortunately, with the weather conditions, as you experienced on the flight, we're unable to locate any wreckage or debris.
The massive search operation went underway late Thursday after Australian authorities announced that two objects spotted in the Indian Ocean could be related to the missing airliner. According to satellite images, the objects were found about 2,300 kilometers away from Australia's city of Perth.
And we must keep this in mind. The task of locating these objects will be extremely difficult, and it may turn out that they are not related to the search for Flight MH370.
Still, officials in Malaysia are being hopeful.
Every lead is a hope, and we have been very consistent. We want to verify, we want to corroborate. We're in the process of verifying and corroborating the information.
But families of the Chinese passengers who were on that plane are losing their patience. As some of them wait for answers at a hotel in Beijing, their anger is growing, especially toward the Malaysian government.
I'm telling you, from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock, you all knew where that plane was. Now you also know where it is. You're cheating us family members.
The Malaysian flight with 239 people on board was headed to Beijing from Malaysia when it disappeared on March 8th. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
Now, shifting our focus to 10th round of free trade pact negotiations between Korea and China have ended without any major breakthroughs. Now, during the talks, which took place over 5 days in Ilsan, north of Seoul, the two sides discussed tariff concessions on various goods, including items classified as both sensitive and highly sensitive. Seoul asked China to open its petrochemical and manufacturing industries, while China demanded that Seoul open its agricultural market. Unable to find common ground, officials agreed to talk further at the next round of negotiations in China. Now, business is booming for Korean construction contractors in foreign markets, with their overseas orders surpassing $15 billion in the first 2 months of this year. Seoul's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said Friday that local builders signed deals worth $15.5 billion in January and February. Now, that is up nearly 60% from the same period a year earlier. The ministry said that Korean construction companies won many orders from the Middle East by building a consortium. The ministry predicts Korea will easily reach its goal of $70 billion in orders in 2014. A record number of Koreans bought products from foreign online shopping malls last year, but now the tide is turning the other way. It's a growing number of foreigners that are now flocking to Korean websites to do their shopping. Our Connie Kim has more on the efforts being made by Korean companies to increase their customer base abroad.
Vietnamese exchange student Doli Lan An spends a lot of time shopping online for Korean products, from cosmetics and clothing to music. And being in Korea makes it relatively easy for her to place orders. But it's also getting easier for those who aren't in the country to buy directly from Korean websites.
So my cousins, they said that Korean website is pretty good because they had English on it, the global version on it, and also the delivery is very fast.
People like those cousins in Vietnam have jumped on board the online shopping trend, as has the Korean government. The finance ministry last week released plans to support an expansion of the nation's online shopping export market by opening the door to more simplified payment procedures. The online export market came in at $25 million last year, but the government wants that figure to rise to $100 million by 2017.
Selling directly to foreign customers is growing. The biggest reasons are a simpler payment system, shortened delivery times, and the popularity of the Korean wave, which has strengthened the nation's brand power.
Reflecting the growing trend, Lotte.com launched a global shipping service last month that extends to 19 countries. Online orders from abroad are sent directly to this warehouse. And with most of the products already stored here, they can be shipped out to global customers in as little as 3 hours. Gmarket, one of Korea's biggest online retail stores, was at the forefront of the shift toward building an overseas customer base. With websites in English and Chinese, its sales increased by 125% last year from 2012. It's not only large retailers that are looking to reach out to the world. A smaller company like this clothing brand, Stylenanda, started reaching out to global customers 4 years ago. Now, it gets more than 1,000 orders from abroad every day. Aiming to go big like Stylenanda, a growing number of small businesses are turning to companies like MakeShop, which provide services such as global shipping and translation. And with more businesses expected to venture into new markets overseas, global sales will begin taking up a greater piece of the pie in the Korean online shopping industry. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Now, it's been a month since the 2014 Sochi Winter Games, but the controversy over the judgment in the ladies' singles competition, figure skating that is still far from over. The Korean Olympic Committee and the Korea Skating Union said Friday that they will submit a formal complaint to the International Skating Union regarding the makeup of the panel of judges for the figure skating competition and the need for other reforms. Korean figure skating star Kim Yeon-ah grabbed the silver medal at the Sochi Olympics despite turning in what was widely seen as a flawless performance, scoring 219.11 points, 5 points short of Russian skater Adelina Sotnikova. Kim's defeat left fans and experts up in arms about the judging, and experts pointed out that the panel of judges was stacked in favor of the Russian. Now, Hollywood blockbusters have a habit of jumping across the globe, but while the exotic appeal of China and Japan have often received exposure, Korea is one destination that has remained elusive on the world's cinema screens. However, all that is just about to change as blockbuster sequel Avengers Age of Ultron, which is shaping up to be next year's biggest film, is set to visit Seoul and neighboring Gyeonggi-do area for a 2-week shoot later this month. Now, the large-scale production will bring a lot of businesses to Korea and exposure for the local film industry, but is it a one-off or the start of a new trend? Well, here to give us the details is our film critic, Pierce Conran. Hello there, Pierce.
Hi there.
Now, let's talk about Avengers, the sequel, being shoot here in Korea. It's the biggest Marvel these days here in Korea. Now, why do you think such a big production has decided to film right here in this country?
I'd say there's a number of reasons. Partly it's because Korea is a location that has seldom been used in Hollywood cinema. Typically we see films shot in China and in Japan, so Korea is kind of a new environment for Hollywood cinema. Also, the Marvel universe, all these films in the Marvel franchises, the Avengers, the Iron Man films, etc., they're all extremely popular in Korea. So by shooting here, they're also guaranteeing that their audience will be even bigger here. So it seems kind of a no-brainer in that sense, but also it's the technical skill offered by Korean film personnel. The Korean film industry is well known for making well-made films, and that's no small part of that is because of the technical personnel. So having them available to help on the ground as a local production team must have been quite attractive to a big Hollywood production.
Now, you talked about the local film productions here. Will this be beneficial for the local movie industry as well?
I believe it will be, and certainly a lot of the local agencies, film agencies, are banking on that. The big agency that people are talking about now is the Korean Film Council. They set up a location incentive program a few years ago, which is to say that if a foreign film would shoot a significant part of their audiovisual work in Korea, then they could apply for an up to 30% rebate on whatever costs they incurred during production. So that's very attractive, and the reason for that is offered is so that the Korean film industry, particularly their personnel, can get international exposure, but also the country itself can have some exposure for the benefit of tourism and perhaps other business.
Right, and the Korean government is very supportive of the Avengers being shot here in Korea, of course. Now, Pierce, tell me, is this the first time a major U.S. film has shot in Korea?
It's not the first, but this is definitely the biggest. Just 2 years ago, the fourth film in the Bourne franchise, called The Bourne Legacy, there was a lot of talk about them shooting in Korea, but actually what they shot there was very, very small. It was a second production unit, which is to say that the director or any of the stars, no one came to Korea. So it was just a very, very small thing that happened. Now here, this is very different. We have 120 people are going to be used in Korea. There's going to be a 2-week shoot, a lot of locations. We've never seen anything quite at this scale for a foreign production coming into Korea.
Now, a lot of experts worry that this could be a one-off thing. Now, do you think this will be the beginning of a new trend where more Hollywood films will choose Korea as their location?
That is certainly the hope. The Korean Film Council, among other commissions, the Seoul Film Commission, the Gyeonggi-do Film Commission, they're banking on that being the case. This is what this could be is essentially one massive advertisement. I mean, Avengers is just going to be such a huge film. Hundreds of millions of people will probably see it. So that means that hundreds of millions of people will see Korea, and will know about this kind of Korean film personnel, how useful it is and attractive as a filming location. Now, there have been rumors that the 5th Mission Impossible film may shoot here in Korea as well.
Really? Is that right?
Yeah. The previous Mission Impossible, called Ghost Protocol, was incredibly popular here. I think it was maybe the second most popular foreign film of that year, if not the first. And Tom Cruise, of course, is extremely popular in Korea.
Of course.
He was even made an honorary citizen of Busan last year. So perhaps he'll shoot down in Busan to take advantage of that. But I'm sure that it won't be the last we'll hear more about that. It's an enormous market. It makes sense to shoot here. And if the more people know about Korea, the more they'll be interested in seeing it on the big screen.
Right, the promotion of a country has really extended it. At first it was politics, and then we went on to trade, and now even, softer industries like the movie industry is a big promotional channel for a country. So what do we know about this shoot so far?
Well, we know it's going to be 2 weeks. It'll start on March 30th. It will take place in, let's see, the Mapo Bridge will be one of the locations. Gangnam will, of course, be a location. And Uiwan in Gyeonggi-do will also be a location. The director, Joss Whedon, will visit the country. Stars Scarlett Johansson and Chris Evans, most likely among others, will also come here. And 120 local crew members will be used in addition to other American crew members, I assume. And the estimates have the business coming into the country pegged at around $25 million, which is not insignificant.
Right, and a lot of I think the traffic will be, cut off for a little bit during those shooting hours. But I don't think many Koreans will be too much of a complainer about that, about the Avengers being shot here. Right. Not only are they shooting here, but they have also cast local actress Soo-hyun. Now, do you think she will become a big star after this?
Well, I imagine she hopes she will. I mean, there's. She's not very well known even in Korea. In fact, most people got her name confused when she was first announced because her full name is Kim Soo-hyun, and of course Kim Soo-hyun is an incredibly popular TV drama star, exactly. And so she's not very well known. She's also a K-drama actress. I was not familiar with her before. I think I'd seen her in one episode of the show Brain a few years ago. But apparently her English is very good, and that is not an insignificant thing, since a lot of the Korean stars that have attempted to break break out overseas, their English is actually not very good. Stars like Rain or maybe Hajiwon, who was signed with a Hollywood agency last year, they're not the best English speakers. So that, obviously makes a huge difference. So we've yet to see what will happen, but this is a huge film. It's a guaranteed exposure across the globe. So if anything, it'll certainly serve her well in her career.
Well, we wish her all the best. Apparently, she was an intern with us at ARIRANG a few years back. So we wish her all the best, and we wish the success of the film as well. All right, Piers, thank you so much for this week. We will see you next week.
Looking forward to it.
And that is all from me at this hour. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with Business Today at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.